What's going on, everybody? Rodrigo Fonador here, Asheville Cash Buyers Whiteboard Wednesday series. Today we're going to be focusing on an issue that gets a lot of conversation. We hear it just directly with properties that we work with or with tenants that we're talking with in regards to buying and selling a property. It's something we see on Facebook, on forums and Facebook groups, and it's just a common conversation point. So we're going to chip in with our 2 cents and do our best to share what our experience and what the way we interpret this issue is. Again, we're not attorneys, this is not legal advice, etc. Don't take this as the letter of the law. This is just how we interpret it and how we interact with this issue with, the tenants that we have and the rentals that we manage, etc. And also kind of what we've seen play out. Again, this is an issue that at the end of the day comes down to interpretation by the magistrate, and the issue at hand that we're talking about today for Whiteboard Wednesday is notice to quit or notice to not renew a lease. This is for rentals as far as single families or if you're renting a house, not a commercial lease. These are rentals, home leases. So for reference purposes, this is season 2, episode 2. And our episode today for Whiteboard Wednesday, we're going to be talking about lease termination notice. How much notice do you need to give, whether you're a tenant or a landlord, to not renew your period or your time there that you've got? So there's 3 different types of leases that we need to be aware of. We got a year lease, you got the month-to-month lease, and in some cases you have a week lease. Very lame, boring, but kind of interesting joke. A week lease is a week lease because you really don't have very many protections on either side of the coin. So if you're renting it by the week, it's not going to be a very strong lease. It's just not a good idea. Personal recommendation, preference, whatever you want to call it, is do a minimum of a month-to-month lease. This is anything that has to do with rentals and landlord, tenant-landlord relationships. There's a lot of information out there. For example, this is just one page, and we're going to be talking about one provision in the statute. The statute, the way I had printed it off, if I would have to print off the whole statute, it's 37 pages. So keep this in mind. There is a lot of information out there. Today we're specifically talking about 4214. Statute 42 provision or point 14. Notice to quit in certain tenancies. So we're going to talk about a year-to-year lease first, and we'll work our way down. Year-to-year lease, the way it words is that a tenancy from year to year may be terminated by a notice to quit given 1 month or more before the end of the current year of tenancy. So our example would be this. Let's say you're running January 1st through December 31st on a given year. And that's your lease. So when would you give notice? That's the question. Our recommendation, because of the way it words, given 1 month or more. So if this is going to end December 31st, the last day you would be able to give notice would be the November 30th. And you'd want to do it that last week of November. So if you're going to give notice, the worst case scenario is you'd want to do it last week of November. And you want to, obviously always give notice in a written format. Whether you're the tenant, you're the landlord, always do written format notice. So you'd want to do it inside of the month of November, before the last week. So that's the thing, before, right? So you could do it up to the 30th, but to play safe and not have any issues, you want to do it before the last week. So you want to get in before November 30th in this example. And now we're going to move into month-to-month leases. And if you're in a year-to-year lease, if you sign a 1-year lease, most lease provisions, ours do, and typical lease provisions roll that if you're in a year-to-year lease and you don't talk about it, you roll automatically into a month-to-month lease at the end of that lease term. So in this situation, you sign a lease for January 1st through December 31st. You and your landlord don't talk, or you and your tenant don't talk, and then it's all of a sudden January 1st. At that point, that lease then becomes automatically a month-to-month lease. So our new time frame is going to be January 1st through January 30th, I think, right? There's 30 days in January. Let's just assume that there's 30 days in January through January 30th. Let's create a little bit of space here. So here's the year-to-year space. Here's the month-to-month. January 1st through January 30th, okay? According to the statute, this is what it says. A tenancy from month to month by a like notice of 7 days. So what happens? You need to give a minimum 7 days. So January 30th, you bring it back 7 days. That's January 23rd. So you'd want to give notice within the be on or before January 22nd. On or before January 22nd, hey, we're not going to renew this after the end of this month. Week-to-week lease. This is where it gets, I guess if you're on a week-to-week lease somewhere, you're not planning to be there a long time, I suppose. You only need to give 2 days notice. That being said, month to month, I find it crazy. 7 days notice is the only minimum requirement. So just be aware, if you're on a month-to-month lease, whether you're a landlord or you're a tenant, 7-day notice is all that's required by law to end a lease agreement. So hope this information was helpful to you all. If you have any questions on this, let us know. We'll do our best to answer them. Again, we're not attorneys. This is just our 2 cents. This is not legal advice or anything of that nature. This episode was about lease termination notices, and it's season 2, episode 2. Appreciate you all tuning in. Take care.